Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.
From the St. Louis Public Radio Newsroom, this is The Gateway. It's Thursday, February 8th. I'm Jonathan Ahl. Over the past few years, the St. Louis region welcomed thousands of immigrant refugee families from Ukraine, Afghanistan, parts of Africa, and other countries. The city's director of the Office of New Americans says it's time to help those new arrivals feel at home.
They just want to live a normal life, be a part of society, have a stability so they can raise their family, and want to give back to community.
Here's St. Louis Public Radio's Andrea Henderson's conversation with Gilberto Pinela. That's coming up on The Gateway. Backers of a measure legalizing abortion in Missouri have officially kicked off their quest to gather more than 171,000 signatures by May. St. Louis Public Radio's Jason Rosenbaum reports.
Okay, I signed.
Tuesday's rally at the pageant in St. Louis drew hundreds of people to sign petitions to put a constitutional amendment repealing the state's abortion ban on the ballot. One of the signers was Olivet resident Anola Proctor.
It would return health care to women and their doctors where it fundamentally belongs.
Tori Schaefer of the ACLU of Missouri says the campaign will have help from thousands of volunteers.
We are very proud of the volunteer base we have, and we're very excited to get those folks out in the field with petitions.
If backers get enough signatures, Missourians will likely decide on the measure in August or November. I'm Jason Rosenbaum, St. Louis Public Radio.
People called for jury duty in the state of Missouri should be paid more for their service. That was one of State Supreme Court Chief Justice Mary Russell's calls for action yesterday in the annual State of the Judiciary address to a joint session of the legislature. Russell has spent time traveling to judicial circuits across the state during her current term as Chief Justice, and she says court personnel are often embarrassed to tell potential jurors the pay rates.
To comply with jury service, our citizens must take time off work and make other arrangements to care for their families. In turn, they receive only the statutory minimum of just $6 per day and 7 cents per mile.
Russell says those rates have not been adjusted since 1989. If inflation is taken into account, jurors should get more than $15 a day and about 18 cents a mile for travel. St. Louis Circuit Attorney Gabe Gore has renewed efforts to free Christopher Dunn, a man who's been in prison for 30 years for a murder authorities say he did not commit. As St. Louis Public Radio's Chad Davis reports, the announcement comes as good news for Dunn's wife, who's been fighting to free him for years.
A jury convicted Christopher Dunn of murder in 1991, based entirely on the testimony of two adolescent boys who later recanted. A judge wrote in 2020 that he did not believe a jury would convict without them. Gore's predecessor, Kim Gardner, filed a motion to vacate Dunn's conviction before she left office last year. Gore halted those proceedings to do his own review. Dunn's wife, Kira, says she's overjoyed by the news.
They agree with the judge who said back in 2020 that Chris had proved his innocence. We're just over the moon today, and we're so hopeful.
The motion comes a year after a judge freed St. Louis and Lamar Johnson, who served almost 30 years for a murder he didn't commit. I'm Chad Davis, St. Louis Public Radio.
A Cook County judge yesterday denied former President Donald Trump's bid to stall a challenge to his place on Illinois' March primary ballot until after the U.S. Supreme Court decides his eligibility to seek re-election. A group of Illinois voters contends the 14th Amendment bars him from re-election based on his alleged activities inflaming the fatal January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol. Cook County Judge Tracy Porter also denied a request by objectors to fast-track their case to the Illinois Supreme Court. Instead, the judge set a hearing for February 16th. That's when the judge may rule whether a state electoral panel was right in deciding Trump should stay on Illinois' March 19th primary ballot. Leaders of the Repertory Theater in St. Louis say their Rally for the Rep fundraising effort has been a success, and the theater will produce one more play this season before returning with a new schedule next fall. St. Louis Public Radio's Jeremy Goodwin reports.
The fundraising campaign started in October when the Rep said it would need to raise $2.5 million by the end of the year to go forward with shows scheduled for February and March. The theater hasn't quite reached that total, but it's close enough to make plans for future productions, says Managing Director Danny Williams.
The outlook for the rep is obviously a lot more positive than it has been, but I don't want to give the impression that all is solved and that we don't need folks to continue to buy tickets and to renew their support.
The rep will go forward with the production of August Osage County next month and announce a new season schedule. The theater is also in the final stages of recruiting a new artistic director. I'm Jeremy Goodwin, St. Louis Public Radio.
According to the U.S. Census, there are now over 135,000 foreign-born people living in the St. Louis region, which is about 5% of the region's population. St. Louis Mayor Tishara Jones created the Office of New Americans in October to help streamline resources for immigrant and refugee families. St. Louis Public Radio's Andrea Henderson spoke with Gilberto Pinela, the office's director, about Jones's goals and how the office is prioritizing new arrivals.
Well, language access is one of the main priorities for the office. Also, making sure that we become a welcoming city for new Americans. Right now, I'm in the process of reevaluating what a welcoming city looks like, what a welcoming certification will look like, and making sure that the Office of New Americans, which is one of her priorities, serves the needs or integrates those new Americans that are coming into St. Louis into the services that we offer.
What role do you think immigrants and refugees play in St. Louis?
Refugees and immigrants, they played a very important role for St. Louis. Number one, they create value by bringing culture and experiences. And they work hard. They come here with also education, because a lot of the migrants and refugees that are coming through, they're already proficient to some capacity in English. They come with degrees and they are ready to contribute. But attracting and retaining new Americans, it is also a key for our long-term growth and prosperity, which perhaps will translate to the entire region.
So talk a little bit about retaining and how that can translate into bolstering that economy.
The way that we do that through the Office of New Americans and the city government is looking at our policies, what we offer right now. Whether it is that they're looking for a business license or a marriage license, how does that look like in a form, in a paper? If they're looking to buy a home or they're looking to do some research, who is on the other side of the window or on the other side of the counter that can help them through this system that we have in place right now?
We are receiving large numbers of newcomers from various different countries. We have some coming in from Latin American countries. And there's been some opposition from people in the region who are concerned about St. Louis becoming overcrowded from a growing population. What is your response to those who have reservations about migrants coming from Latin American countries or from any other countries to St. Louis?
Anybody that is concerned, we are also concerned because we don't want to see people on the street. And we know what's going on in Denver, Chicago, New York. The community agencies, they work very hard to make sure that this new arrival, they feel that they have the support that they need in order to be members of society. So nobody's coming here to do crime. They just want to live a normal life. They want to have a stability so they can raise their family, and they want to give back to community.
How does the Office of New Americans plan to make St. Louis the most immigrant-friendly city?
We have a strategic plan that I'm working on right now to make sure that we become a welcoming city. I want to continue working with organizations that are direct service providers, work with them in collaboration on establishing a pathway, policies, protocols that we can use as a government, and that then inspire other local governments to follow our lead, and then work as a region so we can not only make St. Louis a welcoming city, but also make our entire region from here to Jefferson County to South County a welcoming region.
That was Office of New Americans Director Gilberto Pinela speaking with St. Louis Public Radio's Andrea Henderson. Our Brian Moline edited that report. The Gateway is a production of St. Louis Public Radio, music by Ryan McNeely of Adult Fur. We are a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis. I'm Jonathan Ahl, and from the St. Louis Public Radio newsroom, this has been The Gateway.
Support comes from Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to sustainable and sound conservation of the state's forests, which support more than 41,000 Missouri jobs, resulting in a $10 billion industry. ChooseWood.com.